Robert Cavuto, and today on Metal Rules, we are speaking with Jimmy Waldo of Alcatrazz to talk about the band's upcoming album, Take No Prisoners, due out May 25th. Welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
My pleasure, Robert. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I really love the album, and I love Doogie's voice. I mean, I think he really brings emotion, power with his lyrics. He's such a great fit for the band. Outstanding for the songs.
I think he is, and that was. I kind of thought he would be the first time I saw the guy sing or heard the guy. Really, I thought, wow, someday, I put him on the list. He's like, wow, he's one of those guys. And then I met him in Edinburgh. We were on tour, and he came to see us play, and met him and hung out with him for a long time. Great guy.
Yep.
That he and his wife, and we hung out and spent a lot of time together. So we did that twice. We played in Edinburgh again the next tour, and Doogie came and we hung out. And so then I saw him with Shanker in LA, and there was really no doubt in my mind. And at the time, we didn't know what was going to happen. So I'm just watching the guy sing, and I just thought, wow, he'd be a great one to work with at some point.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him from Shanker. He did a couple of Shanker albums, and he's got such a great voice, and on stage, such a great stage presence too.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, it's great. And I really like the album a lot. And Alcatrazz has this ability to write catchy and approachable rock songs, but there's this underlying energy and element of heavy metal. Is that something that you focus on when you're writing your songs to capture that metal influence and carry the tradition from 1983?
It is. I mean, we always think. I mean, to me, I always think about No Parole from Rock and Roll, and Joe, our guitar. Yeah, that's cool.
I got it when I was a kid. I sorry to interrupt you.
Oh my God! And our guitar player Joe Stump is a big fan of Yngwie Malmsteen and Ritchie Blackmore. So again, the first time we played with Joe, I mean, I heard Joe and I thought, wow, this would be a great fit someday.
Yep.
And we went through guitar players there for a bit. And when we got Joe, I said, this is the guy, because we were both on the same page. And so we draw influences from that record, No Parole. And then, the metal thing I love heavier music. I always liked, when I was a kid in high school, in Ohio, North Carolina, whatever, I was always into the heavier bands. I mean, from Blue Cheer to The Who I love the Beatles, but I was still into the heavier stuff. So even as a keyboard player, I played guitar back then, but even as a keyboard player, I've always loved heavier music. So it's a real natural progression for us to kind of draw from both.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, there's elements of a little bit of everything in these records, because Joe loves, we all like, we love Gary Moore.
Yep.
I'm a huge Gary Moore fan. I love Yngwie's playing. I always liked Yngwie's playing. We had some bumpy times, when he was in the band, but we had a lot of fun. And Yngwie and I basically got along really good, and wrote songs together and stuff. And so I like that kind of playing when it's done that well, and Joe does it well. So I really enjoy that. And some of that, with Joe especially, it leans towards very heavy. Some of the stuff he writes leans very heavy, and some of it is more straight ahead rockish, if you will. We draw from everything from Thin Lizzy to Black Sabbath to Deep Purple to
Rainbow.
Yeah, well, yeah, Rainbow, obviously, yeah. So it's and then we both, when I go to Boston, and I cut guitars with Joe in Boston, and I went 4 or 5 times for this record, and we both talk about No Parole. It always comes up, and we're not conscious of so much about it. We don't sit there and go, well, this one's got to be like Hiroshima. This one's got to be like Krinakuri. It just comes up in conversation, because that album I loved that record, and making that record was really cool.
One of my favorites.
Thank you. Those are my hands in the bars there.
I was going to ask that question. I had that as a note to ask you, whose hands are those?
Well, they had a thing where we released they were probably pigeons. I don't know, doves or whatever. But that set was that big rock thing was there with the bars and everything in the middle of the studio in the film studio, and they said, okay, well, somebody's got to go over there and hold this bird. And some of the guys, like, I don't want to hold that bird. And these birds were harmless. They were white, just white. Like I said, probably pigeons. I don't know,
Yeah.
but they were real docile. And it's like, yeah, sure. So I grabbed the bird and I said, so, okay, we're going to do a bunch of shots. We're going to do one of you there. So I just started going through so that was my big debut.
That was a real rock? I thought you would just maybe
No.
superimposed on the rock.
Oh no, that was not a real rock. That was
Yeah.
that's a prop.
Yeah, that's
But it was that's how big it was. I mean, I was standing behind it, and it went down even farther. So it was probably 10 feet high, actually.
oh wow.
And I think it was we shot that at a Clint Eastwood's Escape from Alcatraz set in
Wow.
Culver City.
Yeah.
So big. I mean, they built this prison set of I forget what cell block in Alcatraz, but it was so real. That was taking at the prison.
This
for real.
was really at the prison?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. We rented the island for the day.
Oh shit.
Yeah, we
And you
had
did film the video too, right?
we had well, the video was all shot at Clint Eastwood's Escape from Alcatraz set in Culver City.
Yeah.
Because and in hindsight, what we should have done is take a videographer with us to the island.
Yes.
We took a photographer, and she was amazing, and she got some great shots. But like I said, nowadays, people with their phones, there were no phones back then. No, nobody had an iPhone. So
Right.
today we'd be filming everything. And we would have gotten some incredible footage at the real prison. We were in Al Capone's cell, and we got stuck in a cell. They put us in a cell to take some pictures, and they closed the doors. And so you can really get a sense of like this. Wow, this is kind of scary. Don't ever want to do anything that'll put me here. And and the door wouldn't open because the prison's it's so rusty.
Yes.
I mean, it's funky. And they got it cleaned up for tourists, obviously, but all that metal work, those bars and the way all that stuff works is not happening. So we got stuck in that cell for about an hour and couldn't get out.
Yeah.
And they called in, the park rangers called in some guys, and they worked on it. They finally got us out. But it was, we're laughing in the beginning, and here's like 5 guys in that cell.
Yeah.
The cells were designed for 2 guys.
Yeah.
So we're standing there going, okay, so what's going to happen now? But yeah, it was cool. But yeah, and today, if we went to that prison, man, you'd be filming everything because it was incredible. It was a really nice day, and you could have gotten shots because they let us go places that the tourists can't go, like that tower. Yep. There's a shot somewhere we're up on that tower. That tower is rickety. That thing is ready to fall over, and they don't allow tourists on the tower. They don't do that anymore.
Right.
So a park ranger took us up there, and that would have been incredible. Just the steps up. There've been so much footage we'd have had, but which we'd still be using probably.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it was really cool experience. So that album. That was like old school, where it was a big deal. We went to Alcatraz for the day, spent the day on the island, and shot all those pictures. And the video was shot at the Clint Eastwood set. I mean, that's the way it used to be. When there were budgets and stuff like that, you got to do cool stuff like that.
That's great.
And the prison set was amazing. Being that we spent 2 days doing that, we shot Hiroshima there and Island in the Sun there. So it was great.
My connection to Alcatraz is we were there it had to be the 70s, maybe 77, 78. And
Wow.
Clint Eastwood was filming his movie, Alcatraz. And he was there walking through
oh my God.
Walking through everything. And we actually saw him walking through. He didn't stop to talk to any of the tourists.
Yeah.
And we did see the cells and the rusty nature of it all. So
oh man, that's cool.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That memory. As far as making records goes in my career anyway. That's a standout. That whole record was there was just such great things about putting the band together and making that record
Yeah,
that will never happen again.
sure.
Most of that stuff, that stuff it can't happen. The business has changed, and I get that. So
Yeah,
it is
do
what it
you
is.
ever post those pictures that from the set or from not from Alcatraz? Do you ever post them online or social media?
They probably have been. Our manager has got any pictures that are around. He's got them,
Okay.
and they probably have been posted. I don't really do Facebook.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, I spend all my time doing music, playing keyboards right
I
here,
get
like
it.
this,
Yeah.
and and I just we've had people in the band in the past that spent hours a day
Yeah.
on Facebook, and I always thought, wow, you could be writing a song or practicing, and I mean, I try to spend time with my wife. I try to let her know that I'm alive.
Yeah.
Uh, this is like a basement studio at our house. And I come down here and shut the door, and she doesn't see me sometimes the whole day. She doesn't know if I'm here or not. And I don't know if she's there.
He puts the food in the slot in the door, right?
Pretty much.
Right under the
I'm not
door.
kidding you. I mean, I go for dinner sometimes and I think, okay, I look at the clock and I go, oh, yeah, I'm in, and I go up. They've eaten an hour ago. So I try to,
Yeah.
but yeah, so Facebook, I don't do much social media. And sometimes our manager will call my attention to things. He'll say, hey, you should check out, and I'll go look at it. But
Yeah.
yeah, basically, plus the Facebook thing for me, the one or two times that I actually got on there and looked at all these people that I don't know and some of them had very nice things to say about the band and all that stuff, but there's a lot of negative stuff on there
Yeah.
about the band and about I don't care about politics and all that stuff, and they want to suck you in, and
Sure.
we've had band members in the past that really got sucked into it.
Yep.
I mean, big time. And real quick, our last drummer, Mark, who's a dear friend, Mark was telling me, and Mark was a Facebook guy, but he had it together. He practiced, and so
Yeah.
Mark says, "Man, my wife is going crazy over the political system at the time, and she's going crazy. She's driving me nuts."
Yeah.
And she's going, we got to do this. We got to do this, Mark. You don't understand. So Mark was going, I don't know what to do. This has been going on for months. And I said, don't disagree with her. Flip it all around and tell her you're in.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? What are we going to do about it?
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
let's,
I've had it a lot. I had a lot of friends too, very similar situation, husband and wife, different political nature, and they were at odds all the time. And I
yeah,
agree that social media is
can
fueled
be.
with fire, and it's like, it's so unnecessary. And people ask me, I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and they go, well, you're a photographer, you should also be on Instagram. I was like, listen, I can only have two addictions.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
do
yeah.
anything personal, or it's always about bands and artists and music, and
Right.
I always get such great feedback, and I never tilt the table to talk about anything personal, and I think that's what
Yeah,
makes it.
and I don't want to share. I got my life's not that exciting, so I got
Fine.
nothing. I really got nothing to share. I am going to do a website. Our drummer now is amazing at
Yeah,
websites. So he and I have been talking, and he's going to help me put a website together.
great.
So what I'm going to do is make a website, take a bunch of the pictures that I have, and take some more pictures of my studio, if you want to call it that, and like once every couple of weeks, I'll update it.
That's great.
And then like Larry's got it together. Larry gets it. So he goes, man, spend 10 minutes every 2 weeks and just write, hey, we rehearsed, or we're going to Italy, or whatever. He said, just put anything in there like that. Make a few comments about what you played on or whatever. Did you get a new keyboard or something? So I'm going to do that. And the record company will be happy. I think that my picture will be on somewhere. I'll be up somewhere. But so I am going to I had a website for years, and nobody ever visited it. And it wasn't like I was getting all these emails or work, you know, so I just let it go. It was getting pretty dated looking, and so
Right, right.
I just let it go. But I'm going to do it again. So
Good for you. You know, Alcatraz is notorious for working with Yngwie Malmsteen, some great guitar players, Yngwie, Steve Vai, and now Joe. How do you find all these guys to be in the band? I mean, that's incredible to have three guys like that in a band.
Ingve, we were in LA. We needed audition for guitar players very quickly at the time because we had originally had the whole thing was set with the record company, and then the guitar player and the drummer bailed that were in England. They couldn't come over, blah blah blah. So oh my God! So we put out the word immediately, and somebody said, "There's this kid, you know, Yngwie Malmsteen, blah blah blah. He plays in this band, Steeler, and oh man, you got to hear him. He'd be perfect for this." So it was a guy at a record store, out in the Valley in LA, and so we auditioned. We set up some auditions, and got him down there. And he played, and I knew right away. I said, "Oh, yeah, this is the guy."
Yeah, obvious, right?
Yeah. I said, "Oh, he's the guy." I mean, forget the shredding. It was obvious that he was some kind of from another planet, you know, as far as his ability.
Yeah,
But it was also his attitude. Yngwie plays with what I call reckless abandon. He doesn't care who you are, where he is. He's going for it, you know, and that's what I love about Joe Stump. Joe's the same way. Joe walks on stage. We can play in front of 10 people, 10,000 people. It doesn't matter. Joe walks on stage. He's on,
yeah.
And he's just taking the strings off the thing.
Right.
You know, he's out for blood kind of thing, and that's the way Yngwie was, and I love that. Steve Vai, same thing, and that's what when we technically auditioned Steve, and. When I had originally talked to Steve about doing the gig, I found him through David Rosenthal,
Yes,
who I think's a New Jersey boy.
I think so too. Yeah, I remember. I know the name. Yeah.
He's Billy Joel's music director, keyboard player, music director. And David, I had met David years ago, and then so I was looking for guitar players, so I called up David, and David says, "I got the number. Don't call anybody else. This is all you need to do. Call this guy." And it was Steve. So I called Steve, and we got together. And Steve goes, "I can't play that Yngwie stuff." And I said, "Well, I think what I've heard you can." I wasn't a big Zappa fan at all.
Yeah,
but I could hear what this guy could do. So anyway, I met with him, and he said, "Okay, well, let's just get together and play." So we did, and he tore it up. I just loved it because of that, because he just went for it. He didn't care, audition, whatever. He just went for it. And he played the earlier Alcatrazz stuff great, put his spin on it, but played the melodies true because he respected those melodies, because Yngwie wrote some amazing guitar melodies. So, so Steve did that, but they both, and Joe plays with that. That's what I like in a guitar player. And that's what I loved about Gary Moore. Gary Moore always sounded really mad when he played. I mean, he just sounded like, "Man,
yeah,
I'm going to get you. If I get off this stage, I'm going to," you know, and being Irish, and we played in Ireland a lot. And I've talked to people. We toured with, in the band New England, we toured with Thin Lizzy, with Phil Lynott.
right.
And I talked to Phil just for a minute or two about Gary Moore. And Phil said the same thing. He said, "Yeah, he was a very emotional guy," is the way he put it.
Yeah.
He lots of ups and downs. Probably he didn't say it, but I'm assuming, you know, alcohol and drugs and stuff, and that's pretty sad. But it also makes for a lot of can make for a lot of aggression and emotion in your playing. I heard Eric Clapton, who you probably know better than I do, rarely does interviews or anything like that. I heard Clapton say about 15 years ago, maybe, he goes, somebody asked him about, was it hard getting through his drug phase? And he goes, "Yeah, you know, the usual thing and blah, blah, blah." And then he goes, "But I honestly think that some of that period of my life, that's why I played the way I did.
Yep.
He goes, he goes, shouldn't say that, but that's the truth. He goes,
Yeah.
Jack Bruce, same thing. And I know people that worked with Jack Bruce in the studio, and they said, absolutely.
Yeah, I've
Said,
talked to a lot of artists too, and it's impacted them negatively. Like
yeah,
there's certain bands, I won't mention names, but they've said that had they been sober, they would have had more albums, they would have had more hits,
yes,
and
yes,
they couldn't get into the studio. And not from speaking with them, but just reading about it and saying
yeah,
they
yeah,
couldn't get
yeah,
in the studio as much and they couldn't focus as much, and they would have had more albums. And that's kind of like a regret that they were all stoned and messed up. And
yeah, yeah. And I've been down that road. Not me. I'm lucky. I've never had a drug problem. Um, New England, we tour. I love to drink. We'd go out at night and drink. But after a couple of days on the road, when we opened for Kiss,
yep.
we thought we were rock stars, and we'd go out every night and party after the thing, and I'd get hoarse. I would just get run down and hoarse. And with three guys, 4-piece band, three guys sang. So if I wasn't singing, that really hurt our harmony.
Yeah.
And the drummer, same thing. So that taught me a lesson. It's like, you got to do your job first. You got to be able to do, if you can drink and do the job, well, so be it. But most people can't. But that kind of brought me back down to earth a little bit. So now I don't drink when we're playing at all. And after the show, maybe I'll have a beer or two, but night off, I'll have 3 or 4. But I'm still not much of a drinker because it affects my playing.
Yeah.
So
I saw New England open up for Kiss, July 25th, 1979, Madison Square Garden. I was there.
You're kidding.
No, first concert ever. First concert ever. Kiss was my heroes, still are. You can see.
Yeah, no, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I remember we had already done several shows with them at that point.
Right.
So Madison Square Garden, it was a big deal, but I was living in New York at the time. So the other guys were in Boston. And so for me, I just got in a cab and went to the Garden. And it was raining that first night, I think. And
yeah, I went the second night. I was at the second night.
And I had my stage. I had some freshly dry cleaned shirts and stuff, and I go to the backstage door. They wouldn't let me in. I was stupid. I didn't have any pass, nothing. And the guy goes, "What, are you kidding?" He goes, "Yeah, you want in to see Kiss? Sure, you and everybody else." And I go, no, really, I'm playing. Wouldn't let me in. So I'm stomping around in the rain, had to get blah, blah, blah. But I'll never forget that, being on stage, walking on stage that first night and seeing people in the front 10 rows with Kiss makeup on, and their mothers with them, or father, and the kid has got Kiss makeup on, holding up signs with our pictures on it. Wow. And that blew my mind, because I thought, well, we made it, we made it, not making any money. And Gene and Paul, with the whole band, they tease me about that a little. They would tease us about that a little bit. Yeah. About our pictures being, kids they'd done very nice drawings, So that was my memory of Madison Square Garden.
That's a great story.
The second night was pretty heavy. We had a big dinner upstairs in that restaurant, whatever that. There's an exclusive restaurant up there with Ronald Luxembourg, the record company, and Bill O'Coin, and a bunch of people at the label and the agency, who I think was William Morris or ATI. Anyway, it was a big deal.
Pretty cool. That's a great story.
Yeah, and I thought, wow, how cool is this? That came from nothing, and now I'm at Madison Square Garden. We just played, blah, 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 blah. That was good memories of that place, for sure.
Yeah, that was my first concert. Great memories, blew me away. And every concert I saw of Kiss after that, regardless of who the band was always judged upon that showmanship. And that's why I guess I'm a big fan still, I guess, 50 years, 40 years later.
Kiss, a lot of people didn't like Kiss or don't like Kiss, for whatever reason. But you have to respect. I stood on stage and watched their shows almost every night. I would stand over by the monitor desk. Yeah. And those guys are so good at what they do.
Oh
and
yeah.
so professional
Right.
and got so together. You have to respect that. I mean, there's no way you cannot respect those guys.
Uh-huh.
Musically, they played exactly what needed to be played. The records sounded like the records. I mean, they
Yeah.
just, and Paul sang his ass off every night,
Yes.
killed it every night. He and Gene and Ace,
And
they
Ace.
all just they really were pros, and I respected that. And as years go by, I look back and I respect it even more,
Yeah.
because I know what it takes. I mean, you tour and it ain't easy sometimes, and they don't drink or do drugs or anything. They weren't
Yeah.
then, but still, it's tiring in a show that big and that massive and that stuff, But those guys impressed me. I remember we were in Alabama or somewhere, staying at a Holiday Inn, and we were in the bar at the Holiday Inn, and the the guys in Kiss, usually you didn't see them after the show. They go to their rooms or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes a different hotel. Well, I was walking through the lobby to get to the bar, and there's Gene and Paul standing in front of the elevator signing autographs.
Yep.
So we sat and watched for a minute, and there was must have been 50 or 100 kids around them, and they were laughing. It was really good vibe, the signing autographs. We go in the bar, we drink for like an hour, came back out. They're still there signing autographs.
Yep.
And now it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, you know. So I
Yep.
mean, those
Yeah.
guys worked their ass off, and I totally respect that.
Yep. No, that's great insight. I want to be respectful to your time. Do you have a minute for a couple more questions?
I have all day.
Oh,
So
all right. I wasn't sure if
yeah.
there was anybody backing me up, so that's
No,
fine.
no.
Oh, great. All right, cool. So yeah, you got Alcatraz took a hiatus through the 90s and through most of 2000, a good part of it. What was the decision to reform and come back to do 3 albums in 3 years?
Well, Graham had the Graham Bonnet Band, and my Giles Lavery, who was managing Graham at the time, just called me out of nowhere, and he goes, "Would you play keyboards on a couple of songs on the new record?"
Yeah.
Which I don't remember which one that was now, but anyway, a Graham Bonnet record. I said, "Sure, I'd be glad to." So sent me the tracks. So I played on one of the tracks, and then I said, "Well, I should go talk to Graham. I haven't seen Graham in years. I'd like to see him again." So I went over and talked to him, and then we talked about me touring with them,
Mhm.
and so that's sort of how it started. And I played more keyboards, and then Giles said, "Well, how about you play on the whole record and then tour?" And yeah, so I told Giles, "Yeah, we talked about touring and blah blah blah." So that's sort of the way that got started, and then we started touring, and somewhere along the way, we decided not well. We Giles had a lot to do with it. Our manager Giles said, "You know what? We should get a different guitar player and do Alcatraz."
Mhm.
And Graham and I both said, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." Because the Graham Bonnet Band we weren't selling out, we weren't tearing doors down. No fault of it. It's just the way the business is or was. So we just changed it to Alcatraz, got a guitar player that could play it, so we thought, and had to go through a couple of guys before we got to Joe. And did that. And then once we made that first record, I could see like, yeah, this is going to work. Doing this will work. The first record was tough because we didn't have a permanent guitar player.
Mhm.
And Bob Kulick wrote a couple of things with me, and Dario Molo in Italy, etc. So I knew that we had to make this solid. So then we found Joe Stump about halfway through that record, and he jumped in and blah blah blah. But I knew once we got Joe, I knew that we had this thing was
Right.
there again. I felt that same thing that we had with No Parole, that we could do that, and so that's what we did.
That's good.
We just continued it with
What
Joe.
what led to Graham's departure?
Pardon?
What led to Graham Bonnet's departure?
Well, Graham had told me for a couple of years, I was hearing from him, he didn't really like this kind of music, the heavier music.
Yeah.
Graham's influences are different, and he just didn't like this kind of music. So we'd discuss it and talk about it, and I'd say, well, but that's where the world is, and it could be good. I mean, he's mentioning bands that, and I don't want to mention any names, but not really good bands, just kind of heavy for the sake of being heavy, not great songs.
Yeah.
And I go, well, Graham, we're not that. We're songwriters, and you're a good lyricist songwriter. But he just didn't like this kind of music. So it just got worse and worse to the point where he said he just didn't want to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the last Born Innocent, even that record, he got it about song 8 and just didn't want to do anymore.
Wow.
And we said, well, we got to do 12 songs. We had 12 songs, or whatever it ended up being on the record. But so he was just very unhappy with the direction.
Okay.
And it was nothing, to my knowledge, it wasn't anything personal in the band. But then, so that was disappointing to me, because I know what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to do this. And so when he was going the other direction, I knew that wasn't going to work. I've been in that situation before where you got unhappy band members about whatever it is. And so, yeah, he eventually left.
Yeah,
before we did that next record. He just didn't want to do it.
Well, Doogie's a good choice. I'm glad you got him. He's a perfect
Yeah,
fit.
yeah, me too. He's been great. And he's a great guy, just a real normal, nice guy. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
My last question for you is, what's the biggest strength of you as a keyboard player, songwriter, and producer?
Well, the producer we can take off the table, because I don't consider myself a producer. I'm the producer by default. I'm the one that has the studio and does all this stuff, and have for years, way back before Pro Tools and all that. And so when it comes time to make records, to be honest, we don't have the budgets, and the budgets aren't there anymore to go out and hire Roy Thomas Baker or Andy Sneap. So we had to make it work. So by default, you look around the room and it's like, okay, I get it. I'm the guy. So by default, I would be the one that would have to go to Boston and cut guitars. And I went to Scotland and cut vocals. And Italy, we went on this drummer with Mark. I was in LA. We cut drums in his garage. And I got the gear. So I would take the gear there and go cut drums. This, on this record, I spent 2 weeks in Italy at the drummer's house in southern Italy, and which was no fun. And Larry's a sweetheart. His wife is amazing, but that part of Italy is pretty desolate. Yeah. I'm trying to be nice. But Larry's English, so he's from New Zealand and lived in London and et cetera. So, but we recorded drums there. So I'm sitting there recording drums thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be the guy that has to watch out for the microphones and the levels and all that stuff. If I'm going to produce, I would like to be able to sit and have an engineer doing that. And we don't have those budgets.
Right.
So I got kind of roped into being a producer. But as a keyboard player, I try to be supportive. I'm not looking to draw attention to myself. I don't care about that. There's so many keyboard players that are so much better than me. They got chops and all that, and they're way up on the radar, and everybody knows who they are. I can't compete with those guys, and I don't want to. I'm happy doing what I do. And I try to come up with parts that work in the band. And there's a lot of stuff I'm playing on this record, and this is what I do. I double guitars a lot, and it's not meant to be heard like, oh, listen to that keyboard part. But if you take it out, you go, oh yeah, something's missing. Right. And I'm playing the same thing with Joe. I'm doubling Joe on a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Playing melodies, some of the harmonies I do with him, and the chords. I'm doing a very heavy B3, which is right there, and through a Leslie, and some of it through a Marshall. I use Marshall heads a lot. So I'm doubling him. And what happens is you get this really nice texture. And it's part to do with tuning, the cool things you get when two guys are playing together. It's just like Brad Whitford and Joe Perry. I mean, it's the same principle.
Yeah.
Two guys playing two guitars sound better than one
Yeah.
on the rhythm stuff. And it's the same idea. And then I just try to bring some of that vibe to it. That's my style, if you will.
Great. That was great. Yeah. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for your time, Jimmy. I think the album is fantastic. I can't say enough great things about with the
Wow,
Dark Edge
that's
and
great.
melody and Doogie singing. So great stuff, great songwriting. And I
Thank
wish
you
you the
so
best.
much. Thank you. I
Hope
really
to see you guys
appreciate
on
it.
tour. I hope to see you guys on tour soon.
You will. We're planning on it. We're planning
Okay.
on doing the States. So yeah, you'll know.
Good. I'll come down. I'll
All
take
right.
some pictures.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll
Bye-bye.
think about Madison Square Garden. I'll think, oh my God, that's the guy. I remember him. He was at Madison Square Garden.
I'll bring the ticket and I'll show you the ticket.
I got to take a picture. I got to take a picture of that ticket. That would be cool.
I will show it to you. I'll send
Thank
it to
you.
your publicist, and your publicist can give it to you. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great
All
day.
right, thanks, Robert. Have a good
Bye.
one. Bye-bye.